Hellbender is an indie horror movie made during the first COVID lockdown in 2020 by a family stuck at home. It tells the story of Izzy and her mother living in isolation in the woods, but there's a dark family secret that Izzy is about to learn. Good evening. My name's Evan, and welcome to Rocklin Graves. Things have been changing over the last few years with the amount of creativity found in studio horror movies, which is great. We've been treated to loads of awesome original films that have done really well at the box office, and that trend doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But when there is a dry spell of creativity, it's always a good idea to look at the smaller independent projects because they're often made with a different intention and don't have to make themselves marketable to a wide audience. You'll find a ton of really unique and creative indie horror movies if you look for them. And one that I've been itching to talk about since it came out is Hellbender. Think about how you spent that first COVID lockdown back in 2020. I vaguely remember sitting in a haze and swimming in swamp ass while slaying all the forces that hell could conjure and absolutely decimating any sort of a healthy sleep schedule or workout habits I had at the time. While I was busy taking years off the end of my life, the Addams family were up in their home in Catskill, New York, writing, directing, starring in, shooting, producing, editing, and writing music for an independent horror film about a mother trying to hide her daughter from their family's history of witchcraft. You think that's cool? I can take out a marauder like that. That might be all I have to show from the lockdown, but the Addams family slightly one-upped me when the film premiered at the Fantasia International Film Festival back in 2021 and was released onto Shudder 6 months later to really positive reception. Because this is a smaller movie and I'll be getting into spoiler territory, I'll say at the top that you really should watch Hellbender. It's a super unique movie with a lot of heart behind it, so go show some support and then come back to watch this video. I'm excited for this one. Let's get into it. Hellbender doesn't fuck around. Right off the bat, we're seeing a bloodied witch get hung with a sack over her head and a bunch of spectators looking like internet rat people bathing in delusional self-excellence after torching someone for disagreeing with their take on The Last of Us Part 2. That game was great, let's hash it out. The witch hangs, kicking and squirming around a lot longer than was expected, so one of the women pulls out a revolver and just unloads on the stubborn heathen. When that doesn't work, she approaches with a dagger, but before she can reach her target, the witch bursts into flames and ascends to the sky, which transitions into a title card and a dope jam session. The title of the movie is actually taken from the band the Addams family made together, but with the numerical spelling dropped. Shit rips. Hellbender takes place mostly in this house up in the woods where Izzy and her mother live in isolation. The mom goes into a nearby town for errands, but Izzy is apparently sick and can't be around other people, so she is entirely cut off from any sort of social life while she's homeschooled and kept away from anyone else. It's clear pretty early on that this is a very low budget movie, but it's not in a way that feels lazy or cheap. You can tell that they were just working with what they had, and considering the tight restrictions they were working with, it's a good looking movie. There's some great shot composition and the camera work is solid, and while the budget shows more in the lighting of the interior scenes, getting a well-exposed shot in this sort of environment usually means a lot of lighting and rigging gear that just isn't within reach for a production like this. It's hard to know where to draw the line with things that are worth bringing up when you're talking about independent movies like this. It's definitely not fair to criticize something that's unrealistic for the scope of the production, especially when the movie itself is so creative. There's a real charm to Hellbender, and that's something that can really easily get lost when a bunch of money gets dumped into a project. Anyway, I won't be bringing up the budget again because this movie absolutely deserves to stand above that, but I did want to touch on it a bit just to get it out of the way. One benefit to having the whole crew be family is that their chemistry is completely natural. Izzy is played by Zelda Adams and her mom is played by Toby Poser, Zelda's actual mother. Their interactions feel really genuine thanks to that, and you can tell they're having fun doing scenes together. It's really sweet. This isn't a story about sweet mother-daughter fun time though, and there's something creepy going on up in the woods. I really like that Hellbender doesn't dump explanation on you. There are a few things that you might expect will get explained in more detail, but they're left up to your imagination to figure out what you think they mean. I have a bizarre fascination with stories that hint at weird things and then never bring them up again. It's one of the things about Stephen King's writing that I really enjoy. It makes the world feel more realized by setting things up that are mostly separate from the main story. It's a tricky balance because you don't want to bloat the story or overly confuse the viewer, but thankfully Hellbender handled those nods really well. One of those is right after Izzy's mom comes back from town for the first time and Izzy says she went hunting.
I went hunting? For what? A laugh, but it was a ghost.
Okay, sweet. So there's a spooky ghost in the woods, and that's something that we'll learn more about. Nope. Izzy's mom just goes out into the woods and does a fucking ritual with sticks, hair, berries, leaves, and blood, and then the thing she made floats up into the sky. My guess is that was a ritual to ward off spirits, and the laugh that Izzy heard came from one, but unless I'm really missing something, I don't think this gets explained more. I have no idea what that spirit was, or if I'm even understanding this correctly, but I like when a movie presents things like this and lets you come up with an answer. One thing I'd really like an answer to is why Izzy's mom thinks it's acceptable to walk outside with a blindfold on and just drag a plate along the forest floor for 7 seconds and call it a meal when they have perfectly good grocery stores that have perfectly good eggplants. By the way, the reason I keep referring to Izzy's mom like that is because she's credited as mother. She's not a named character, but I'm gonna call her Toby for the rest of the video because it's just easier that way.
Spring eats winter. Winter eats fall.
Fall eats summer. Summer eats spring.
Keep that in mind. It's going to come back later. After that wonderful meal that probably had all the vegans watching salivating enough to solve a drought, Toby looks to be enjoying something she's keeping from Izzy. This is actually something important to the plot, but it was really confusing on the first watch because this just looks like she's eating like raisins. It goes on for a while. The raisins give witchcraft power-ups that Toby uses to spy on Izzy, and when a lost hiker approaches Izzy looking for help finding his way back to his car, Toby shows up.
Oh fucking God!
She's acting normal enough for this dude to follow her into the forest as she ignores every question he asks and proceeds to give a job interview.
Are you married?
No.
Do you have any children?
No.
That's exactly how we handle the interview process where I work. That guy was played by John Adams, so I'm wondering how much of that dustification was done for the plot and how much of it was retaliation for never doing the damn dishes. The next day, Izzy checks for her mum to be asleep and heads out into the forest. During her brief encounter with Mr. Oblivious White Guy, he mentioned that his niece lives
One mountain over. She lives a mountain over.
Izzy's been starved of social interaction for long enough, and she decides that it's time to branch out and meet people by standing in the trees and watching people in bikinis, hoping that they won't find that remotely creepy and will then come and ask them to join and have a beer by the pool. Izzy, I know you haven't really done this kind of thing before, but not in a million years is that gonna—
You want a beer, neighbor?
I'm giving it a shot. By the way, there was a neat bit of visual storytelling that seems like it was probably a spur-of-the-moment thing. Toby stands in the window watching a wasp try to get back outside. It's possible that they caught it and brought it inside for this shot, but my guess is that it just happened at the right moment, and it fits the story really well. Toby's keeping Izzy locked in isolation because, for reasons I'll get to in a second, she's dangerous. This is a great visual cue that shows Toby feels guilty about having to hold Izzy back from a life in the outside world. Anyway, back to this.
Well, are you gonna be creepy or are you gonna come over?
Creepy. She's clearly gonna be creepy. Have you not been paying attention? Amber here is played by Lulu Adams, Zelda's sister. It's slightly distracting how much of a resemblance there is between them because, they're not actually meant to be related in the movie, but that just comes with the territory of making a movie with your family. We've been told that Izzy's sick and that she can't be around people, but we don't know exactly what's wrong with her, and there hasn't been anything noticeable to confirm her sickness. I like how little information we have about why Izzy needs to be in isolation, because Toby's secretive behavior and witchy shit definitely shows that there's more going on here than a sick kid. That makes this scene where she's hanging out with Amber a tense moment where you're not quite sure what's gonna happen. It is a nice scene despite that.
Damn, girl, what's your band's name? Hellbender? Wicked.
Izzy awkwardly fumbles through trying to socialize, but you can tell how badly she wants this kind of connection, and it goes well enough that she gets invited to come back for a pool party the next day.
I've got some friends coming tomorrow. You should come.
While all that was going on, back at the house, Toby is sneaking around back at her witchcraftish antics. I fucking adore this effect. It was one of the things that really caught my attention the first time I saw the movie. She puts her hand on an old book, and judging by what she sees, this is Rob Zombie's process for coming up with music videos. These visions occur a few times throughout the movie, and they basically serve as foreshadowing, while also showing what the two are thinking and not saying. Well, Izzy's caught the bug now. She wants to take Hellbender out of the forest and start playing shows and talking to more people, but Toby stands hard and steady on not letting her daughter be around anyone. You'd think with all the crazy shit we've seen her do so far that she'd have figured out that Izzy was spending time with Amber today, but no, she's got no clue. It's really sad to see how badly Izzy wants to break out of her shell, and she ultimately makes that move on her own when she goes to the pool party the next day. This is the pivotal scene of Hellbender, and you know right off the bat that something is gonna go wrong here, you're just not sure exactly what. There is absolutely nothing on the nose about this interaction, I promise you.
I don't have an STD, I have an immune disease.
Oh, which one?
X-linked severe combined immunodeficiency disease.
I thought only boys got that. And it's super fatal past infancy?
Also, Izzy does an impromptu drum solo. Anyway, the group hangs out for a record amount of time before one brings out the tequila shots, and the one dude decides that in honor of Izzy's first shot, they'll use a live worm instead of the one you'd usually find in a tequila bottle. She initially refuses because she's vegetarian, but thankfully the voice of reason speaks up and changes her mind right quick.
You were a vegetarian, now you're a wormitarian.
All seems good and swell at first, but if you've ever had tequila before, you know how it be. I've been there. The devil's drink. I didn't mention this earlier, but Amber doesn't actually live in this house. It's a vacation home for a family who spends most of their time in the city, so she just hangs out here, and despite her assurance that they'd never get caught, the man, who I'm assuming drives a minivan, chases them off the property and into the woods.
What the fuck, dude?
Look, Amber, you gave her the tequila shot. Don't just leave her high and dry. She runs off and the homeowner catches up with Izzy, but the scene cuts before we can see exactly what happens. This is when we learn what's actually going on with Izzy and why her mother's been imposing all these restrictions on her. We know that Toby has a history with some pretty weird shit, so it was safe to assume that they might be witches and there was some sort of curse on them, but that's not quite what's going on here. Toby isn't a witch. She's something called a Hellbender, and so is Izzy. She just doesn't know it. I'm a little hazy on what a Hellbender actually is, but Izzy sums it up pretty well later on.
It's kind of a cross between a witch, a demon, and an apex predator. They've been around since the dawn of time, and they're still evolving.
The reason that she's not been allowed to eat meat is because that's apparently what awakens the wolf inside the sheep for a Hellbender. So when Izzy had the worm in the tequila, she underwent a sort of transformation. According to Toby, the thing that fuels a Hellbender is the life force that courses through something, so I'll assume that some of that is left behind even in cooked meat. You could at least give her some McDonald's. I can tell you from personal experience that there is no life force in that shit. The more fear in something, the better. So because that worm was alive, she got a fair hit right off the bat. A lot of the runtime from here on out is just Toby explaining things about Hellbenders to Izzy and the two of them playing around with their abilities. There are some pretty cool sequences, and it's nice to see the tension between them lessen for a while.
It takes a lot more than maggots to fly, you greedy cunt.
We get some pretty sweet moments, but that won't last forever. There's been a hell of a lot of foreshadowing with this mantra.
Spring eats winter, winter eats fall.
Fall eats summer, summer eats spring.
You might be able to figure out the direction things are heading from that. Even though Izzy's now aware of what's going on, Toby still insists that she can't be around other people until she learns to fully control her nature, because at the moment, she's too dangerous. This movie has a very unique structure, because most of the time, the second act of a movie has a lot of action and plot development, but here it's mostly a showcase of some of the things a Hellbender is capable of. There's a bit of police investigation about the missing hiker, but it doesn't really go anywhere.
Young lady, I need you to be totally honest with me. Where can I buy that shirt?
There's only one. I made it for our band.
Young lady, if you don't become a designer, you should become a writer.
Yeah, with designs like that, the sky's the limit. The main thing that's important through this second act is Izzy's increasing secrecy and her clear desire to give in to the darker side of being a Hellbender. It's that time, ladies, gentlemen, and Hellbenders. I'm gonna spoil the ending of the movie, so you can skip to the conclusion chapter if you don't want to know where things end up. Those visions I talked about earlier make it pretty clear that Toby's losing some level of control over Izzy, and that mantra from earlier gets clarified when Izzy asks her mom this question.
How old will you grow to be?
You tell me.
So apparently all Hellbenders die at the hands of their daughters, and when Toby discovers what Izzy's been hiding in the basement, shit gets dark real quickly. Izzy took Amber to this bizarre place after trying to make up with her a year after that pool party, but Amber stayed cold towards her, and Izzy decided enough was enough. There's a whole whack of skeletal remains down here, so Izzy's been keeping busy with her new powers, but Toby is none too pleased about it, and she decides she's not gonna let her daughter continue doing what she's doing. We get a look at what I guess a Hellbender truly looks like, and then Izzy takes full control and traps her mother in this strange black world after killing Amber. She doesn't wind up killing her mother just yet, but instead decides to trap her in this world of nothing, just like Izzy feels Toby did to her for her whole life.
I'm going to town. You need anything?
Bass strings?
You got it.
So that's Hellbender. It's a weird and unorthodox movie in a lot of ways, but it's creative and unique in a way that I find really engaging. There's some strange pacing and on-the-nose moments, but I definitely think it's a movie worth checking out, especially if you're looking for something different. I enjoy the performances from the Addams family, and the isolated witchy tone really works. Hellbender-y tone, I guess? Some of it is awkward for sure, but I have a soft spot for weird indie movies because you can tell that the people behind things like this are really passionate about their craft. I can't say how impressive I find Hellbender to be. It's fucking awesome that a family decided to make this instead of wallowing away in the isolation we were all experiencing back when it was made, and it opened up some doors for them. They've got another movie on the horizon that's premiering at Fantastic Fest this year, and I've been itching to find out more about it. I'm really looking forward to giving it a watch when I have a way to see it, and I'll definitely do a video on it when I get the chance. Until then, thank you for stopping by Rocklin Graves. I hope you've enjoyed your stay.